You've been told vitamins are good for you? The more the better. After all, who doesn't want to live longer, feel stronger, and protect their brain? But what if I told you that some of those pills in your medicine cabinet could be setting you up for a stroke, and you wouldn't even know it? I'm Dr. Robert Lustig, and I've spent my career uncovering how modern nutrition advice often leads us astray. The truth is, not all vitamins are benign. In fact, after the age of 60, certain supplements can shift from being helpful to harmful almost overnight. Today we're going to explore the science, the real biochemical story behind how a few seemingly innocent vitamins can increase blood viscosity, alter vascular function, and tip the delicate balance that keeps your brain safe from a stroke. Because when it comes to your health, the dose, the form, and the context matter more than the label on the bottle. Let's dig in. We've all heard it before. Vitamin E is the ultimate antioxidant. It protects your cells from damage, supports your immune system, and helps keep your heart young, or so the marketing claims. For decades, supplement shelves and TV commercials have preached the gospel of vitamin E as the hero nutrient that stops aging in its tracks. But here's the uncomfortable truth. In the wrong dose and in the wrong form, this so-called miracle vitamin can quietly turn from healer to hazard, especially if you're over 60. Let's start with the basics. Vitamin E isn't one compound. It's a family of 8 molecules, 4 tocopherols and 4 tocopherols. And 4 tocopherols, they all have antioxidant properties, but the body doesn't treat them equally. Most supplements, especially the cheap ones, use a single synthetic form, alpha tocopherol acetate. It's the one that looks best in a test tube because it neutralizes free radicals efficiently in isolation. The problem is, your body isn't a test tube. Inside you, these molecules compete for space on the same transport proteins in your liver and tissues. So when you flood your system with high doses of synthetic alpha tocopherol, you actually displace the other members of the vitamin E family, notably gamma tocopherol and delta tocopherol, which are the ones that provide critical anti-inflammatory and detoxifying benefits. In essence, the supplement you thought was protecting you ends up knocking out its own teammates. Now, what happens when that balance tips? Blood chemistry changes. Vitamin E interacts directly with platelets, the cells that help your blood clot after an injury. At physiologic levels, meaning the small amounts you get from nuts, seeds, and leafy greens, vitamin E helps prevent platelets from clumping excessively, lowering the risk of clot-based strokes and heart attacks. But once you cross the threshold, say by taking 400 international units or more a day, the effect is no longer protective. It becomes inhibitory. Your blood takes longer to clot. Tiny vessels in your brain, already fragile from age and years of blood pressure stress, now face increased risk of rupture. That's what we call a hemorrhagic stroke, a bleed in the brain, and it can happen suddenly without warning. In clinical research, we've seen this story unfold again and again. The ATBC trial in Finland and the HOPE-2 study both examined tens of thousands of participants, many of them older adults. In both, vitamin E supplementation didn't reduce the overall stroke rate. In fact, it increased the risk of hemorrhagic stroke by roughly 20%. Think about that. The very vitamin people were taking to protect their hearts was quietly increasing their odds of a brain bleed. And because the symptoms of early vascular fragility, mild dizziness, headaches, vision changes, are easy to dismiss, most people never realize they're in danger until it's too late. But let's go one step deeper. Biochemistry, antioxidants are often described as if they're always good, as if they always mop up free radicals and prevent damage. That's a half-truth. Free radicals aren't villains, they're signals. Your cells use them to communicate, to adapt, to trigger repair. When you drown that signal in excessive antioxidants, you can blunt your body's ability to sense stress and respond appropriately. In the brain, that matters. The delicate balance between oxidation and reduction keeps your blood vessels responsive, able to dilate when needed and constrict when necessary. Too much vitamin E can disrupt that balance, leading to stiffer vessel walls and unpredictable blood pressure changes, especially in people already on anticoagulants or aspirin. Combine that with the natural thinning of vessel walls that comes with age, and you've created the perfect storm for a microbleed. Now, this doesn't mean vitamin E is the enemy. Far from it. Nature built it into almonds, avocados, spinach, and sunflower seeds for a reason. But in food, it comes in balanced ratios, all 8 forms, buffered by fiber, fats, and phytonutrients that guide its metabolism. In supplements, we've isolated one molecule, concentrated it to hundreds of times the natural dose, and removed all the context. We've taken a symphony and played only one note loudly over and over again. The result? Chaos. For those over 60, the message couldn't be clearer. Your physiology is different now. Your liver processes fat-soluble vitamins more slowly. Your arteries may already have microscopic weak spots. The margin between enough and too much shrinks with age. So if you're taking high-dose vitamin E because you heard it's good for your heart, it's time to pause. Talk with your physician, check your supplement labels. Most people get all the vitamin E they need from a handful of nuts and a drizzle of olive oil. The larger lesson here isn't about one vitamin. It's about how we've come to view health as something you can bottle and buy. Biology doesn't work that way. You can't isolate wellness to a single nutrient, especially when that nutrient at pharmacologic doses can tip a delicate system into danger. The body runs on balance, not on excess. And nowhere is that more evident than in the story of vitamin E and stroke risk, a reminder that sometimes more isn't just unnecessary, it's unsafe. When we talk about vitamins, the B group often wears a halo. They're water-soluble, natural, and essential for metabolism, energy, and brain function. That's all true, in the right amounts. But sometime in the last few decades, we went from respecting B vitamins as nutrients to worshiping them as miracle elixirs. You see it on supplement labels and energy drink cans: Mega B complex for focus and energy, high potency B12 for brain support. The logic seems simple. If a little is good, a lot must be better. But that's not biology, that's marketing. And for older adults, especially those over 60, this mindset can quietly backfire, particularly when it comes to the vascular system, your network of arteries, veins, and capillaries that keeps your brain alive. Let's start with B12. Also known as cobalamin, it plays a critical role in DNA synthesis and red blood cell formation. It also helps regulate homocysteine, an amino acid byproduct that's like cholesterol's lesser-known cousin. Elevated homocysteine has long been linked to heart disease and stroke because it irritates the endothelial lining, that delicate inner surface of your blood vessels, and makes it more prone to inflammation and clotting. So logically, you'd think lowering homocysteine with B vitamins should reduce stroke risk. But the human body, as usual, doesn't follow simple equations. In multiple large-scale trials, including the Norvit and HOPE-2 studies, researchers gave participants high doses of vitamin B6, B12, and folic acid to bring down homocysteine levels. Yes, the levels dropped, the biochemistry, but the outcomes didn't. In some cases, stroke risk actually went up. Why? Because the metabolic pathways that process these vitamins don't act in isolation. When you flood the system with pharmacologic doses of B12 or B6, you push enzymes beyond their natural operating range. Think of it like revving an engine too high for too long. You get more exhaust, in this case reactive oxygen species, and less control. Vitamin B6, or pyridoxine, is especially tricky. At normal levels, it's essential for neurotransmitter balance and amino acid metabolism. But in excess, it becomes neurotoxic. Chronic oversupplementation, common among older adults taking nerve support formulas, can cause sensory neuropathy, numbness, tingling, and balance problems. But what's less appreciated is how that same toxicity can affect vascular tone. The nervous system and the vascular system are intimately connected. Damaging the small sensory nerves that help regulate vessel constriction can create erratic blood flow patterns, particularly in the brain. Over time, this adds stress to already aging capillaries and small arteries, increasing the likelihood of microtears, the kind that can lead to small silent strokes that go unnoticed until memory or coordination start to slip. Then there's the issue of methylation. B6 and B12 both participate in the body's methylation cycles, the chemical processes that turn genes on and off, detoxify hormones, and maintain cellular health. When you overload these cycles with excess cofactors, you can throw them off balance. It's like flooding an assembly line with too many workers and not enough raw materials. The system becomes chaotic. In some people, especially those with genetic variations like MTHFR mutations, too much synthetic B12 or folic acid can paradoxically increase unmetabolized byproducts, leading to oxidative stress rather than protection. And let's not forget that after 60 digestion and absorption change, the stomach produces less acid, meaning less intrinsic factor, the protein that helps absorb B12 from food. Many doctors rightly recommend supplementation for this reason. But the correct dose for deficiency correction is far smaller and shorter term than what many people end up taking indefinitely. Over time, blood levels of B12 can skyrocket far above physiologic norms. High circulating B12 has been linked in several studies not to better health, but to higher risks of cancer, liver disease, and yes, cardiovascular events. It's a marker of metabolic imbalance, not vitality. The irony here is that the people most drawn to these supplements, older adults hoping to preserve their brain function and prevent dementia, may inadvertently be increasing the very vascular stress that accelerates cognitive decline. The brain's small vessels are exquisitely sensitive. They rely on smooth, consistent blood flow and flexible walls. When you alter that balance with biochemical overload, whether through elevated homocysteine swings or disrupted nitric oxide signaling, you prime the brain for inflammation and microvascular injury. Those injuries accumulate silently for years, manifesting later as what we call vascular dementia. Now, none of this means you should avoid B vitamins entirely. They're essential. But the key word is essential, not excessive. The body needs milligrams, not megadoses. The best sources remain the foods nature designed, leafy greens, fish, eggs, legumes, and whole grains, where B vitamins coexist with other nutrients that modulate their absorption and function. Food provides balance, supplements, especially synthetic isolates, often do not. So if you're over 60 and taking a B complex or energy booster that boasts 1000% of your daily value, remember that your metabolism doesn't care about marketing percentages, it cares about equilibrium. Too little B12 leads to anemia and fatigue. Too much can strain your vascular system. Too little B6 impairs neurotransmission. Too much can damage nerves and disturb vessel control. The dose makes the poison. And that's not philosophy. That's biochemistry. The broader lesson here is that we've turned vitamins into drugs without calling them drugs. We've separated them from their natural context, increased their potency, and assumed the body would handle it. But biology is about balance, not brute force. For older adults seeking longevity and clarity, it's time to rethink the more is better approach. Because when it comes to B6 and B12, more can quietly turn into too much, and the first place you'll feel it may be your blood vessels, not your energy levels. For decades, calcium has been the golden child of the supplement aisle. It's sold as the mineral of strength, the key to unbreakable bones, and the eternal guard against osteoporosis. Doctors, advertisers, and health magazines all told the same story. If you're over 60, take your calcium every day. Strong bones for life, right? But what if that advice, repeated so often it became gospel, was built on a misunderstanding of how calcium actually behaves in the body? What if instead of building bone, that daily tablet was slowly hardening your arteries? Let's start with the basics. Calcium is indeed essential. It's not just for bones. It's a signaling molecule. Every heartbeat, every muscle contraction, every nerve impulse depends on calcium moving in and out of cells in perfect rhythm. But here's the thing, your body keeps calcium on a tight leash. It maintains blood calcium levels within a razor-thin range. If calcium levels drop, your parathyroid glands release hormones to pull it from bone. If they rise, your kidneys and bones work to pull it back down. It's a closed-loop system. The problem isn't calcium itself, it's how we deliver it. When you get calcium from food, from dairy, leafy greens, or small fish with bones, the absorption is slow, steady, and accompanied by other nutrients like magnesium, phosphorus, and vitamin K2. These partners make sure calcium ends up where it belongs in your skeleton. But when you take a calcium supplement, especially in pill form, you deliver a bolus, a massive, sudden spike of calcium into your bloodstream. Within an hour, your blood calcium levels can jump dramatically. That might sound harmless, but physiologically, it's anything but. Your blood vessels aren't designed to handle that kind of surge. The endothelium, the inner lining of your arteries, senses the spike and reacts defensively. Calcium ions trigger vascular smooth muscle cells to contract, which raises blood pressure. Over time, those cells can also start behaving abnormally. Instead of remaining flexible and elastic, they begin to take on bone-like properties, depositing calcium in the arterial wall. This process is called vascular calcification. In other words, you're literally turning soft tissue into bone, and that's not good for circulation. The clinical data back this up. The Women's Health Initiative, one of the largest studies ever done on postmenopausal women, showed that while calcium supplements slightly improved bone density, they also increased the risk of heart attack and stroke. Later meta-analyses confirmed its supplemental calcium, particularly when taken without vitamin D, K2, or magnesium, raises the risk of cardiovascular events by roughly 20–30%. That's not a trivial number, and it's not because calcium is toxic, it's because the delivery system is unnatural. Here's the biochemical irony. Your bones and your arteries are in constant communication. The same signaling molecules, osteocalcin matrix, GLAP protein, and others, tell your body where to deposit calcium. When everything works right, calcium goes into bone. When those signaling pathways are disrupted, say by nutrient imbalances or hormonal changes with age, calcium ends up in the wrong place. Vitamin K2, found in fermented foods and animal fats, is one of those key regulators. It activates proteins that keep calcium in the skeleton and out of the arteries. But most people taking calcium supplements aren't taking K2. They're taking calcium in isolation, which is like building a house by dumping bricks on the lawn and hoping they'll stack themselves into walls. It's also worth noting that dietary calcium doesn't cause the same problem. Why? Because nature designed it to be absorbed gradually in harmony with other nutrients. The matrix of food matters. In milk, for example, calcium is bound to casein and lactose, which slow its release. In leafy greens, it's paired with magnesium and potassium, which help balance the electrical charges that govern calcium transport. This steady trickle keeps blood calcium stable, avoiding the arterial shock that comes from supplements. And here's the kicker. Many older adults who take calcium supplements already have mild kidney dysfunction, even if their lab results still fall within normal. The kidneys are responsible for filtering excess calcium out of the blood. When that system is even slightly impaired, calcium has nowhere to go. It lingers in circulation, precipitating in tissues, joints, and arteries. Over time, this leads to stiffness, inflammation, and plaque instability, all precursors to stroke. The very supplement meant to protect your bones can end up sabotaging your heart and brain. Now, this doesn't mean you should avoid calcium altogether. You need it, just not in a way that overwhelms your biology. If you're over 60, your best strategy is to focus on dietary sources and the cofactors that help calcium go where it's supposed to. That means getting enough magnesium, nuts, seeds, dark chocolate, vitamin D, sunlight or safe supplementation, and vitamin K2 fermented foods like natto or aged cheese. Together, these nutrients act as the traffic lights of mineral metabolism, guiding calcium safely into bone and away from blood vessels. What's tragic is how long this message has taken to reach the public. For years, the supplement industry capitalized on fear of fracture, fear of frailty, and turned it into a billion-dollar market. But bones aren't built by calcium alone. They're dynamic tissue, constantly remodeled by the forces we place on them. Weight-bearing exercise, balanced hormones, adequate protein. These are the real drivers of bone strength. Calcium is just one brick in the wall. So the next time you see a bottle promising bone health support with 1,000 milligrams of calcium per serving, remember this: the human body doesn't thrive on spikes, it thrives on balance. A calcium pill may give you a short-term boost in bone density, but at the potential cost of long-term vascular health. And if that leads to a hardened artery or a stroke, what good are stronger bones if they're carrying you to the hospital? Sometimes what looks like prevention on the label turns out to be risk in disguise, and calcium supplements are one of the clearest examples of that deception. Iron is life. Without it, your blood can't carry oxygen, your cells can't make energy, your brain can't function. Every living organism on Earth depends on it. And yet the same metal that sustains us can also destroy us. That's the paradox of iron. It's both the spark and the fire. When you're young, your body regulates that spark perfectly. But once you're over 60, the balance starts to shift. The same mineral that once kept you strong can now quietly fuel the flames of inflammation, oxidative stress, and ultimately stroke. We've all grown up with the message that more iron is better. For decades, iron was synonymous with strength, iron-rich foods for energy, iron supplements for vitality, but context matters. The reason younger people, especially women, often need more iron is because they lose it through menstruation. After menopause, that loss stops. In men, the balance shifts even earlier, since they rarely lose iron at all. And here's the crucial detail: the body has no natural way to excrete excess iron. Once it's in, it stays in. You can't pee it out or sweat it away. The only reliable way humans lose iron is through bleeding, which for most older adults rarely happens. So year after year, a little bit more iron accumulates in the liver, the pancreas, the heart, and the brain. Now, iron in the right place is a miracle worker. It's part of hemoglobin, ferrying oxygen from your lungs to your tissues. But iron in the wrong place, free, unbound, and roaming in your bloodstream, is a biochemical time bomb. When iron isn't safely locked inside a protein shell like ferritin or transferrin, it reacts with oxygen and hydrogen peroxide to create free radicals, unstable molecules that attack everything in sight: cell membranes, DNA, and proteins. This reaction, called the Fenton reaction, is the engine of oxidative stress. It's the same process that makes metal rust or an apple turn brown, only now it's happening inside your arteries. As we age, the walls of our blood vessels become more susceptible to damage. Years of elevated blood pressure, glucose spikes, and low-grade inflammation weaken the endothelium, that protective inner layer of cells lining every artery. When free iron circulates, it binds to these damaged spots, catalyzing oxidative reactions that turn cholesterol into a sticky, inflammatory form called oxidized LDL. That's the version that doesn't just float harmlessly. It burrows into vessel walls, forming plaques. Over time, those plaques harden, narrow the arteries, and make them brittle. And brittle arteries don't bend, they break. That's the start of a stroke. What's particularly concerning is that many older adults are unknowingly feeding this process through multivitamins and fortified foods. Most senior vitamins still contain iron, even though the majority of adults over 50 don't need it, and in fact shouldn't take it. Cereal, bread, and even protein bars are fortified with iron, often in cheap inorganic forms like ferrous sulfate. Combine that with reduced antioxidant defenses that come with age, and you have a perfect storm for vascular damage. This isn't just theory. Epidemiological studies show that higher ferritin levels, the storage form of iron, are associated with greater risk of heart disease, diabetes, and stroke. In men who naturally accumulate more iron with age, the correlation is striking. In one Finnish study, men with ferritin levels above 200 micrograms per liter had more than double the risk of heart attack compared to those with lower levels. The same pattern shows up in women after menopause. What's more, populations that lose blood regularly, like premenopausal women or blood donors, consistently have lower rates of cardiovascular disease. In other words, the healthiest iron levels might be the ones that mimic mild regular iron loss. Here's where the biochemistry becomes fascinating and sobering. Iron's power comes from its ability to change states. Ferrous, Fe, Oli, and ferric, Fe, ferric. That flexibility allows it to shuttle electrons during normal metabolism. But when there's too much of it, that same flexibility turns against you. Free iron starts driving uncontrolled redox reactions, producing cascades of reactive oxygen species that overwhelm your antioxidant defenses. The result? Inflammation, endothelial dysfunction, and a vascular environment primed for catastrophe. Now, some might argue, but I'm tired all the time. Maybe I do need more iron. Fair point, but fatigue has many causes. Low thyroid, poor sleep, anemia of chronic disease, and true iron deficiency anemia in older adults is uncommon unless there's an underlying problem like gastrointestinal bleeding. In fact, iron deficiency in that age group is a symptom, not a diagnosis. The tragedy is that instead of finding the cause, many people reach for an iron supplement, effectively pouring gasoline on the fire. So what can you do if you're over 60? First, check before you supplement. Ask your doctor for a simple ferritin test. Optimal ferritin levels for longevity are often between 50 and 100 ng/cell-mol. Not too low, not too high. If yours is elevated, skip the multivitamin with iron. Focus instead on foods that balance iron's effects. Plant-based sources of iron like lentils and spinach are absorbed more slowly and come packaged with antioxidants and polyphenols that modulate absorption. Limit red and processed meats, which are rich in heme iron, the most readily absorbed and most likely to cause oxidative stress. And here's a fascinating tip. Coffee and tea, when consumed with meals, naturally reduce iron absorption thanks to their polyphenols. A simple cup of tea with dinner can be an act of vascular protection. We often talk about heart health in terms of cholesterol and blood pressure, but the real story runs deeper into the chemistry of metals, oxidation, and aging. Iron is essential, but after 60, it can become a silent saboteur. Too much iron rusts not just metal, it rusts biology. And when that rust takes hold in the arteries leading to your brain, it doesn't take much for a tiny plaque to rupture and a life to change forever. Balance, not abundance, is the key. Because with iron, as with so many nutrients, the dose that gives life can also take it away. Vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin. For years, it's been marketed as the ultimate cure-all. Weak bones? Take vitamin D. Low mood? Take vitamin D. Immune issues, fatigue, brain fog. Vitamin D seems to have been crowned the nutritional superhero of the modern era. And to be fair, there's truth behind the hype. Vitamin D plays an indispensable role in calcium regulation, immune balance, and gene expression. But as always, the dose makes the difference, and for those over 60, the line between help and harm is thinner than you think. What was once a deficiency epidemic has now swung to the opposite extreme, an epidemic of oversupplementation. Let's rewind for a moment. Vitamin D isn't really a vitamin at all. It's a hormone precursor. Your skin makes it when exposed to sunlight. Your liver and kidneys then convert it into its active form, calcitriol. That hormone controls how much calcium you absorb from food and how much you deposit into bone. So far, so good. But when you flood your system with synthetic vitamin D, especially in megadoses of 5,000 to 10,000 IU a day, you override the body's natural regulatory mechanisms. Instead of a steady trickle of calcium moving from gut to bone, you create a tidal wave. Here's where the danger begins. Calcium doesn't have free will. It goes where the body tells it to go. And if that signaling system is disrupted by too much vitamin D, too little vitamin K2, or a lack of magnesium, calcium doesn't stay in your skeleton. It migrates into soft tissues, arteries, kidneys, even heart valves. What results is vascular calcification, the literal hardening of arteries. In young people, arteries are elastic, able to expand and contract with each heartbeat. In older adults overloaded with calcium from excessive vitamin D, those arteries become rigid, like old garden hoses left in the sun. The blood pressure goes up, vessel flexibility goes down, and the risk of stroke and heart attack skyrockets. The irony is that most people taking high doses of vitamin D believe they're protecting their bones. But bone health isn't just about calcium absorption. It's about calcium placement. That placement depends on a delicate dance among three nutrients: vitamin D, magnesium, and vitamin K2. D pulls calcium into the bloodstream. Magnesium helps convert D into its active form and keeps the enzymes balanced. K2 directs calcium into bone and away from arteries. But the supplement industry, in its reductionist wisdom, isolated one piece of the puzzle, vitamin D, and supersized it. The result? Millions of older adults with high blood levels of vitamin D and calcified arteries to show for it. Clinical studies are beginning to confirm this danger. Research from the University of Copenhagen found that people with both low and very high blood levels of vitamin D had greater risks of cardiovascular mortality, a U-shaped curve that perfectly illustrates the problem of excess. Another study from Johns Hopkins showed that vitamin D toxicity can lead to hypercalcemia, elevated calcium in the blood, which directly damages the endothelium, the fragile lining of blood vessels. This isn't a theoretical risk, it's biochemistry in motion. Let's unpack that mechanism. When vitamin D levels soar, calcium absorption in the intestines can increase up to 4-fold. The kidneys, tasked with filtering the excess, can't keep up. High calcium levels in the blood cause smooth muscle cells in the arteries to transform, literally, into bone-like cells that begin depositing calcium into the vessel wall. These deposits stiffen the arteries, narrow the lumen, and make them more prone to rupture under pressure. For someone over 60, whose vascular elasticity is already reduced by age, that's a recipe for stroke. What makes this particularly insidious is that the symptoms of vitamin D overload are vague: fatigue, nausea, muscle weakness, easily mistaken for just getting older. Meanwhile, the silent damage continues. You might feel fine, even virtuous for taking your supplements, unaware that your arteries are slowly turning to stone. By the time the consequences appear, hypertension, arrhythmia, kidney stones, or a sudden cerebrovascular event, the damage is done. Now let's be clear, vitamin D deficiency is real and dangerous in its own right. It's linked to immune dysfunction, depression, and bone loss. But the goal isn't to swing from one extreme to the other. The safe range for most older adults is around 30 to 50 nanograms per milliliter, not the 80 to 100 that online wellness influencers often tout. More isn't better. It's about balance, synergy, and context. If you're over 60 and already taking vitamin D, here's the smarter approach. Get your blood levels checked